So the second half of the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series comes to you live from Okayama International Circuit here on GlacierTV. We are currently racing for the field to get ready for the green flag. We'll be going green in less than 30 seconds time. Your top 5 for this race: Christian Aranha will be starting in the pole position, 1 minute 44.015. Then Jan Nisolowski, Wade Hayard, Jamie Nurbod and Emran Benitez. We are waiting now for the lights to start this race. Red lights are on.
Green, green, green.
And the green lights are on. We'll go here at Okayama International Circuit. Aranha gets a good start. As does Nisolowski. They're going to be too wide coming down into turn number 1 for the first time. And you see that Nisolowski managed to hold into the second position. But Nurbod managed to get himself up into the third spot there. Great move on the outside of turn number 1 there, which puts him up momentarily into the third position. Vincent here doing the commentary for this race, round 7 of the iRacing Skip Barber Premier Series here at Okayama International Circuit. 30 laps here today, and we saw already there the move for the battle for the third position as we've got a car going wide. That is Jamie Nurbod, who goes a little bit wide, and also Wade Howard. He's lost himself another position there as they're too wide, coming down the back straightaway for the first time in the 20-lap race. There's going to be a drag race coming down into the corner now, this long right-hand 180-degree corner. It looks like Menendez has got the inside line. Should he be able to clear him? He should be able to get the run down into the next left-hander, and indeed, he does so. So he takes 4th position, move Wade Howard all the way back into the 5th position, losing 2 spots early on in this race and coming under pressure as well from Kurt Crum, who's currently sat in the 6th position. And they see Kurt Crum, and he goes down to the inside of that number 7 machine, so he is trying to make the move on the battle for the 5th position. But as he got into the left-hander, he had the right line there, but then he was held on the outside line. Coming down now into the final 2 corners to complete lap number 1, we have our first retirement of the race, and that is the number 11 car of David Spardy, who started this race in the 14th position. He is classified as retired. So as they come down in turn 2 on lap number 2, Christian Aranha is your race leader. Jan Nisolowski is in 2nd with Jamie Nurbod in 3rd. Emmanuel Menendez in 4th. Wade Hayward in 5th. And we've talked about all season long how we wanted to get drivers like Aranha and Nisolowski racing in the same race together. David Williams isn't here today, unfortunately. Was that would be a great battle for the top 2 positions. But Nisolowski currently 4 attempts for the second behind Aranha in that battle for the 1st position, and that number 1 machine has got a clear track ahead of him, and he's trying to use that to his advantage right now. Down to the inside of David Bird, that was Kurt Crum in the battle for the 5th position, so 6th position. Kurt Crum having a great run early on in this race. He's got Ray Howard ahead of him, as David Ratcliffe also managed to get himself up in position. He is now up into the 7th spot, also overtaking Dave Farr in that battle for the 7th position. Dave Farr has lost himself at the start of this race 1 position after getting a great start here at Okayama. So coming down from lap number 2, Christian Aranha, he is your race leader. The gap between himself and Jan Nisolowski as they come across the line, it looks as though it is closing just a little bit. You see Aranha moving all the way down to the right-hand side of the racetrack to try and break that toe to Nisolowski. When lap number 1, he managed to get himself a beautiful toe down that long straightaway. Aranha playing defensive here early on, and that is forcing Nisolowski to have to use his own speed and not the draft there of Aranha, but that could come to a bit of a disadvantage for Aranha later on, as he's allowing Nisolowski to use that clean air, which means that coming in down into close to like turn number 1, he's not going to have the huge understeer that we've seen some of these drivers have so far in this series. So to run to the top 5, Aranha is your race leader, Nisolowski in 2nd, Jamie Nurbod is in 3rd, Wade Howard in 4th, So it's Wade Hayward, sorry, in 4th, and then Kurt Crump rounding out your top 5, with Daniel Radcliffe in 6th, and David Farr in 7th, Stephen Edwards in 8th, Manuel Menendez in 9th, and Sean Woodhouse in the 10th position. And you see David Farr there, he is down in pit lane. He had a bit of a moment there on turn number 5. There were 2 wide coming down into the corner. The number 9 machine is short, Stephen Edwards. He was on the outside line. There's a car ahead of them which has gone off. That was David Radcliffe. And as Radcliffe was on the gravel, it looks as though there was a bit of an incident behind him as well. And that was Emmanuel Menendez getting to the side, of David Farr in the number 7 machine. So we had 3 cars on the gravel there into turn number 5. And that is not the sort of thing these drivers want at the start of this race. Farr, he is getting himself there on pit lane. He is currently all the way back now in the 15th position. And Ramahandri, the 16 machine, is also down in pit lane. There's another car you see there down in pit lane as well. That is Ramani, who is now looking as though he's going to be out of the race. He is 2 laps down at the present time. Out front, Arana working lap number 4 of 30. Here's your race leader. That gap stabilised at 6/10 of a second between himself and Izolowski in the number 3 machine. So Arana is not able to drive away like we've seen him do so far in the Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series, and he is having to think his way through this race, but using some very good, intelligent lines to avoid Nikolowski from getting that draft early on here. And you're having a look at the battle 7th position at the moment. Robert Jakubowski is putting a bit of pressure on Sean Woodhouse in that battle for the 7th position. The gap between those 2 drivers is less than half a second as they are currently working through the midway portion of this lap. Jakubowski looks like he's very good on this slower technical twisted section of the racetrack, and if he get a good drive out of this onto the back straightaway, it looks like he might be able to get himself a nose underneath, but not quite good enough. He might have to wait now until the start of finish line, but it looks as though Woodhouse is better onto the power, and that was what's stopping Jakubowski. You see him getting a little bit sideways there. He's allowing Adam Cantor to get up right behind him. That's what is allowing Jakubowski to not get the draft he needs. So Reinhardt complete lap number 4 of 30 here. Last time by 1 minute 44.495. Nikolowski 1 minute 44.449. So the times between these 2 drivers pretty much the same. Nikolowski is trying his hardest to stay with Reinhardt. We've seen before that Nikolowski is very good at the start of this run, but seems to fade a little bit in that final third. Will that be the case here? As we're going to take a moment just to look at Nikolowski. Hopefully we'll go on board at the moment as he's working through the second portion of this lap. So Nikolowski, he's in the charge on Christian Reinhardt in that battle for the race lead here. Those 2 drivers are going to put out a 2-second gap to Jamie Narbon, who's currently sat in the 3rd position in that number 5 machine. Wade Hayward, he is certainly sat in the 4th position. Kurt Crump rounding out your top 5, but the first 6 drivers are still less than 10 seconds apart on the racetrack, but still an interesting battle going on. The 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th position, with those drivers separated by less than 2 seconds between them. And Nikolowski, it looks at the moment, he hasn't got the speed to really put pressure on Reinhardt. He can get that gap down to less than half a second as he did so across the line last time by, but he's not really able to put himself into an overtaking position, and that is going to be key for Reinhardt. Just running these defensive lines, not being put under too much pressure to make a mistake, and just keeping Nikolowski behind him, because overtaking is difficult here at Okayama. This track was once dubbed as a Mickey Mouse circuit by Formula 1 drivers in the mid-90s. And overtaking is difficult here, despite the fact you have some long straightaways into tight corners. Really is a case of really getting good onto the brakes, and on these cars that is easier said than done. I tell you what though, Nicolowski, he is a lot closer this time by as they come into the final sector. It looks as though he's got himself the gap down to less than 0.2 of a second. Meanwhile, Wade Hayward is less than a half a second behind Jamie Narbar in the battle for the third position. So first and second dueling out, third and fourth dueling out here on the racetrack. And Hayward looks like he is closing, but ahead of him, Nicolowski is even closer to the rear of Christian Aranha in that number one machine. But again, Nicolowski doesn't get a good drive off the corner. Have a look at him now, see if he makes a dive to the inside. He still isn't close enough, as is Hayward. He's not quite close enough there to making the pass on Jamie Narbar in the number 5 machine. Narbar, last lap, Jamie Narbar in the number 5 machine. He did a 1 minute 45.115 last time past the stripe. Narbar driving for Club Iberia, and behind him Wade Hayward driving for Club Australia New Zealand. He did a 1 minute 45.165. So, as it was the case with Nicolowski, it looks as though that Hayward gets himself into that dirty air, finds it very difficult then to gain any more speed. He is looking down to the inside to come down into turn number 7, not quite close enough. Has to pull back to the left-hand side of the racetrack because he's got Kurt Crum sat behind him, looking to pounce in case any of these drivers make a mistake. And at the same time, Nicolowski still very close to the rear of Aranha, but again in that dirty air zone, that kind of half a second gap when really sat behind another driver, hurt your car, and Nicolowski's got to try and drive through that if he's going to try and set himself up a pass on Aranha. He's looking very close there for the final 3 corners, but he loses that time on exit as Aranha's able to put that power down just a smidgen earlier. And Narbar gets up a little bit wide there coming off the final corner. Looks as though Hayward is not quite close enough to make the move on him there. We'll have a look as they come streaming down towards turn number 1 now, as they can put 7 laps in the book out of 30. And indeed, Hayward wasn't quite close enough there on Jamie Narbar to get that pass for the 3rd position. It looks like Hayward has got buckets amounts of speed, just not being able to use it at the moment, as he's being held up ever so slightly by Jamie Narbar in that number 5 car. But as they come down the back straightaway, we'll keep an eye on that. We'll hopefully go on board with Hayward in just a matter of moments time as they come down into turn number 7 again. Has Hayward got the drive? It looks like he's getting a lot closer, but is he close enough to make a move down to the inside? He's looking there, but still not quite close enough. And let's not forget, Kurt Crum is currently sat in the 5th position. He still is waiting for these 2 drivers ahead of him to make a mistake so he can pick up a position. Kurt Crum, he's doing a great job in that 5th position at the moment. His gap between 3rd and 5th is less than 7 tenths of a second on the racetrack, even though these group have fallen back to about 5 seconds now behind your race leaders. And last time by, Nicolowski dropped back. and he dropped back by 4 tenths of a second. Niezolowski from the rear of Christian Reinhardt that last lap. It's like dirty air really starting to affect Niezolowski in that number 3 machine. We've seen on our previous broadcast that Niezolowski, leading from the pole, is very good out front, but when behind other drivers, it looks like his setup isn't quite tuned enough to work in the draft down these long straightaways. It's going to be interesting as we'll have a look at Niezolowski in a couple of laps' time. We'll just have a look to see how his car's handling, but he is still within a second of Christian Reinhardt, which is absolutely no mean feat here at Okayama. We already have 8 laps in the books here out of 30, so approaching the 1/3 distance of round 7 of the Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series here on Glacier TV with me, Will Vincent, and we've got this coverage on Glacier TV, and this looks like we're going to have a good fight out front and a good fight for 3rd, 4th and 5th position. It's going to take a moment just to show you that battle between 3rd, 4th and 5th and let you see what they're doing from the driver's cockpits. So now the only retiree so far, David Spadel, is out of the race, as is Ruddy Ramahandri and Emmanuel Menendez. We've got David Farr as well, currently scored 6 laps down, however still technically in the race. He scored in the 13th position, but Hayward got very, very close to the rear of Jamie Narbar as they came into turn number 1 this time. They come down the straightaway. It looks like Hayward's got good speed, but not quite close enough still to make that move on the number 5 car on Jamie Narbar. And we had word, actually, Hayward just got into the rear of Narbar just the tiniest of amounts. We don't think there's cars, but Hayward getting very racy here as we are about at the 1/3 distance of this race. Hayward thinks that he's being held up now by Narbar in that number 5 machine and wants to find a way past, but doesn't look as though he gets a good drive off this final corner to really make that pass happen. We'll have a look as they come down this time by into the final corner, and it looks like he's got a little bit closer actually. He looks down to the inside, but perhaps he's looking a bit too early, and that might have cost him the opportunity to make a move there. He ducked out the toe, cut back in, then tried to make a move down to turn number 1, and that, I think, is what cost Hayward there, is that number 7 machine, as he lost the draft coming down to turn number 1, and with it, lost the momentum and making a move on Narbar. We're going to keep an eye on this battle just for a couple of moments more. Narbar is currently sat in the 3rd position. Wade Hayward in 4th. Kurt Crump in 5th. Macy Hayward looking once again down to the inside. Still not close enough. Oh, let's see that. Narbar, he goes wide. He'll have the left-hander for the next corner, which is just what makes it keep him. But you see Hayward there trying to run the outside line. But Narbar was so lucky there that the following corner after he messed up was the left-hander, as it enabled him to have the racing line there into turn number 9, and that's the only thing there that saved Narbar from losing that 3rd position. So just very quickly, the battle out front, that gap between Christian Reinhardt in the number 1 machine and Jan Nikolowski is still within a second of each other, those two drivers. Jamie Narbonne is in 3rd, Wade Hayward in 4th, Kurt Crum in 5th, Stephen Edwards in 6th, David Ratcliffe in 7th, Robert Jakubowski in 8th, Adam Kaner in 9th, and Sean Woodhouse rounding out your top 10. And 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th have all pretty much got themselves a second and a half between themselves on the racetrack. You say that though, Jakubowski is looking down to the inside of David Ratcliffe as come down into turn number 1. And in fact, Jakubowski lost himself a lot of time there in the first sector of that racetrack, lost himself about a second and a half to David Ratcliffe. That is going to allow a little bit of breathing space for that number 20 of that number 12 machine there, who's been trying to put a gap between himself and that number 8 car of Robert Jakubowski. We've talked about how consistently good Jakubowski has been in this series, and it looks as though right now he's getting himself yet another strong, safe finish in this series. As we're halfway through now, when drop weeks start coming into play for these drivers, it is something that really does play in their minds when they come into making some of these high-risk manoeuvres. Hayward still behind Narbonne in the battle for the 3rd position, and Hayward looking a little bit closer as they come down into the penultimate corner, but this is where he loses that speed. It looks like Narbonne can hold so much more line for the apex of the final couple of corners. Hayward gets so good through the final corner this time, but still not quite close enough. There's 2 cars between them, and you don't tuck up in these cars as much as you do in the Starmaster, the IndyCar, the Formula 1 cars that also use the aerofoils. And it looks like Hayward there is having to wait yet another lap, as we are currently working lap number 13 of 30 here at Okayama. So last time by Wade Hayward's last lap was 1 minute 45.276. Was Jamie Narbonne, it was a 1 minute 45.398. But that means absolutely nothing if you cannot get past the car ahead of you. And it looks as though even though Hayward has the speed, partially bolstered by the fact that he gets a nice draft down these 2 long straightaways, it looks like he has no chance to make the pass. Behind him, Kurt Crum has dropped back to about half a second behind these 2 drivers, still patiently waiting for that mistake. We haven't seen him do anything at all on Wade Hayward, so it looks like Kurt Crum is just looking for that mistake from any of these drivers as they are coming down now into turn number 8, and Kurt Crum getting close but still not making any form of manoeuvre there. And we're currently having a look at Nikolowski in the number 3 machine. He has closed himself down to about 3.5 tenths of a second as they're coming down into the final 2 corners. Once again, Reinhardt having a better run through the penultimate corner. Nikolowski getting a little bit better through the final corner, but again, not close enough to make a run down this front straightaway. And we've seen this so often when you have 2 fast corners leading into that front straightaway. It's very difficult for the car behind to get any form of momentum, which means that even though you've got a big braking zone to turn number 1, you haven't got the opportunity to make the pass. So Nikolowski is currently sat in the 2nd position. His last lap, a 1 minute 44.614. Christian Reinhardt, 1 minute 44.761. So it looks as though Reinhardt is a little bit slower than Nikolowski, but Nikolowski hasn't been able to get the run, even though he gets a good run there through it. That 180-degree corner coming down the back straight away. Is he going to try and make a look down to the right-hand side? He doesn't look as though he's going to be close enough. And let's not forget, even if you do, the following corner is the left-hander, and you see that Nikolowski not putting too much pressure on a runner, as they almost touched it. I say that Nikolowski got a great one for the middle of the corner, and Reinhardt less so, and Nikolowski almost running into the rear there of Christian Reinhardt in the number 1 machine. So we'll have 14 laps scored complete out the line. Christian Reinhardt is still your race leader after leading every single lap here today. Jan Nikolowski currently sat in the 2nd position with Jamie Narbonne in 3rd, Wade Hayward in 4th, Kurt Crum running at your top 5 with Radcliffe Edwards, Jakubowski, Woodhouse and Craner, positions 6 through 10. We are looking at a battle between Jan Nisolowski, currently sat in the second position, less than half a second behind Christian Aranha, having one of his toughest drives in the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series. They came across the line last time by. The gap between them still less than 5/10 of a second. So Nisolowski is keeping that pressure up on Christian Aranha as we are working lap number 15 of 30 here at the Okayama International Circuit. Round 7 of the series here on Glacier TV. Will Benson in the booth, calling the action for this and every race of the Premier Series. So, having a little bit of a deeper look into this, it looks like Nisolowski, from what we can see, is very good down these straightaways. Very good braking into the corners, but it looks as though he's not getting the drive off the corners that Aranha is having. And that is what really is saving drivers like Aranha and Narbart at the moment. They're getting good drive through the centre and the exit of the corner, knowing that means they'll put themselves into a good position down the next straightaway, and means that drivers really can't make a move into the corners, even though that will be their weakest point. As we're looking at Kurt Crum in the number 2 machine momentarily, he is stuck behind Wade Hayward in that epic battle for third. Sorry, for fourth. Yeah, I was right the first time. Third, fourth, and fifth on the racetrack. These drivers now falling back to behind 10 seconds. You see that Kurt Crum making a move there on Wade Hayward. That moves himself up into the 4th position momentarily. Kurt Crum, let's move on up into the 4th position. Wade Hayward down into the 5th spot. And can Kurt Crum do what Hayward was not able to do and try and get himself around the number 5 car on Jamie Narbar, who is currently sat in the 3rd position? So Crum's last for 1 minute 45.137. Looking at Jamie Narbar, he did a 1 minute 45.471. And let's not forget, even though Kurt Crum had to get around Hayward, he was still 3/10 of a second faster. He's looking very racy as they come through this left, right, flat out kink there, which they call the S's down into the big, hard braking zone. Coming through 180 degrees to your right hand side, then coming down this back straightaway. And I tell you what, Crum is very close. It's less than 2 cars between these two. But can he gain some momentum coming down this back straightaway to make that pass down the inside? He still isn't quite close enough unless he gets on the brakes very, very late. He's looking down to the inside. He's looking down to the inside. They're going to be turning inside by side. Crum managed to get himself in the 3rd position, taking Jamie Narbar and also getting down to that left-hand side line for the bottom corner. Great pass there by the number 2 machine of Kurt Crum, moving himself up into a podium-paying position. And that move was set up all the way down in turn number 4. As you saw, Crum got himself a very good run off the exit of the corner, used the drive to his advantage, and then was the last of the light breakers down into turn 5, managing to get himself just enough track between himself and the edge of the racetrack to get himself the pass made, and that's what got him up into the 3rd position. So move Crum up into 3rd, move Jamie Narbar down into the 4th position, with Hayhood even right behind, still currently sat in the 5th position. Looking at the battle out front, Jan Nisolowski is still less than half a second behind Christian Aranha in the number 1 machine, Nisolowski in the number 3 car, as we have got the 3 best I-rated drivers in the top 3 position, albeit slightly confuddled there. Aranha in the number 1 machine, he's your leader. Nisolowski in the 3 in 2nd, Kurt Crum in the 2 is sat in 3rd. They're going to have lap traffic ahead of him of Martin Silva in a couple of laps time. You see Nisolowski still looking all the way down into the inside, coming to these big braking zones, but not being able to do anything with it, and that is what is hurting Nisolowski. As we're over halfway through this race now, it really is time when these drivers start picking up the pressure and upping the ante. as they calm themselves down to the next couple. In the next couple of laps, will be 10 laps to go. And there will be 17 laps scored complete at the flag. So we have got 3 laps until that magical lap 20 point, when you see a lot of these drivers start upping the ante on their competitors. Coming through the final corner once again, Aranha getting a good drive. Nisolowski almost as good of a drive, but he's still not going to be able to use the drive to his advantage as they come down the front straight away and back down in turn number 1. You see there for turn number 1, Nisolowski is very good on the brakes and on the power, and that is what is giving him a huge advantage at the start of this lap. But Reinhardt being able to drive off these fast sweeping corners, and that is what gaining him the advantage and making it so difficult for Nisolowski to get past. And just for a couple of moments, you see they've got the lap traffic there. They're going to go 3 wide down the back straightaway, almost 3 wide there. They all think better of it. Nisolowski tucks in right behind Reinhardt. They're coming down the back straightaway, going to ride on board with Nisolowski in just a couple of moments' time. They come down into that, and see they're going a long way round. This could be an interesting manoeuvre, but just not getting the grip on the outside line. I can see the logic of that, so it would put a Reinhardt to the outside the next 2 corners, but that's an interesting tactic there by Jan Nisolowski, but just didn't have the grip to make it work. We're going to ride on board with Nisolowski. We'll be back in just a minute's time. Action to report there. Wade Hayward, which was sat in the 5th position coming into this lap, has dropped back significantly from the rear of that Kurt Crum-Jamie Narvor battle, having an incident there going off the racetrack. He's not lost himself any positions, but really dropped him into the clutches of David Ratcliffe here in the number 12 machine. They come down to complete another lap there. That would be 18 laps scored in the books. And Hayward is losing himself a lot of time now. He's got to be careful he doesn't lose himself much more, otherwise he will have Ratcliffe all over his rear wing. That battle between Narvor and Crum. It looks like Narvor isn't that much of a slough in turn now in the draft behind Kurt Crum in the number 2 machine, but out from Nisolowski and Reinhardt. Still less than half a second between these 2 drivers, showing off the competitive spirit of this race. And by my books, it is the first time Arana has really been challenged in any one of these Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series races. So having a quick look at Christian Arana, he is coming through the final couple of corners to complete the 19th lap of 30 here. We'll have 11 laps to go at the flag. Aranha has been under pressure from Nisolowski, but nothing so severe that he's had to do anything differently to what he's been doing before. For Aranha, it's a case of turn laps in, get yourself up into pole position. Coming into these final 10 laps for Aranha, that has been exactly what he has done, as the pressure now is all Nisolowski's to put on him, as we are currently working lap number 20 of 30 here at Okayama International Circuit, round number 7 of the Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series here on GlacierTV, and we're shaping up to have a great tete-a-tete battle with Christian Aranha in the number 1 car and Jan Nisolowski currently sat in 2nd in the number 3 machine. Further back in this field, it looks as though for the most part everyone has spread themselves out just a little bit. Stephen Edwards has managed to gap himself 5 seconds between himself and Robert Jakubowski in the number 8 machine. And then Jakubowski back to Sean Woodhouse is a further 10 seconds. 3 seconds between Woodhouse and Kana, who's currently sat in the 10th position. And then look at that, that is 45 seconds between Kana in the number 14 and Wolfgang Wildener, who's currently sat in the 11th position in the number 13 car, 1 minute and 31 seconds behind the race lead. So as they come in the final corner of the lap, they come across the line, this time by 10 laps to go there for Christian Aranha, a name that symbolises road racing here in the Skippies, and Aranha doing a great drive there, currently sat in the first position in the number 1 car. This is what we like to call cruise control, and we're going to go on board with him for just a couple of moments. So the gap between himself and Nisolowski is dropped down to less than a third of a second. Nisolowski looking racy there. He knows he's got himself less than 10 laps to go in this race, and he's starting to put that pressure on Christian Reinhardt. Perhaps he's taking himself a different tactic to what he's used so far in this season, where he's driven away to the sunset. This is the first time we've really seen himself sat in the pack for a couple of races now, and changing your strategy to deal with that is something that Nisolowski looks like he's dealt with perfectly. But has he got anything left in the tank to put pressure on Harana, coming through on 9.5 laps left to go? Got themselves 2 corners of this lap left to go, and this is where Aranha really is good, getting that launch onto the front straight away. Perhaps he might have set his car up a little bit just to deal with that, knowing that if he can keep it on the black shiny stuff for the other corners on this racetrack, he can just drive away a little bit, coming down the front straight away, and also that of the back. And the gap between himself and Nisolowski as they come across the line, it looks as though Aranha has managed to gain himself about a 1/10 of a second on Nisolowski, but that really is just a dirty air here in the battle for the first position. Kurt Crummin and Jamie Narbar still having that battle for 3rd and 4th position. Narbar not letting Crum get away. The gap between those 2 drivers is 3/10 of a second, 32 100ths of a second in fact, and Narbar still putting that pressure on Kurt Crum. So Jamie Narbar currently sat in the 4th position. We haven't seen too much of him this season, but he is doing a great job there, trying to fight for the final position on the podium. We're going to ride on board with him for a couple of moments and just look to see how close he gets to Kurt Crum as they come down this back straightaway into turn number 6. So close, still so far away from being able to make a pass is Jamie Narbar. Perhaps he's waiting for the last lap to be able to do so. It looks as though the way to do it down the back straightaway should be the last of the late breakers. That is what Kurt Crum is able to do about 7 laps to go now to get himself up into the 3rd position. And with 8 laps left to go here at Okayama, running through your race order, Christian Reinhardt is your race leader. The gap between himself and Jan Nisolowski is up to 6/10 of a second. Kurt Crum currently sat in the 3rd spot, which is 14 seconds behind the race lead, with Jamie Narbar in the 4th position, Wade Haywood in 5th, David Ratcliffe in 6th, Stephen Edwards in 7th, Robert Jakubowski in 8th, Sean Woodhouse in 9th, and Alan Crania running out your top 10, as we've got ourselves 7.5 laps to go here at Okayama, and this is where business really is going to start picking up. Niezolowski, can he make the move on Christian Reinhardt with this short space of time left? Can Jamie Narbar get back around Kurt Crum in the battle for the 3rd position? We've also got ourselves a couple of smaller battles elsewhere, as David Radcliffe is only a 2.5 ahead of Stephen Edwards in the battle for the 6th position. So a couple of good battles on this racetrack as we approach the final stages of this race. Momentarily having a look back at your race leader, Christian Reinhardt, coming through the final corner to put 23 laps in the book here in the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series presented by iRacing.com. And Christian Reinhardt's last lap, a 1 minute 44.701. Jan Niezolowski, however, a 1 minute 44.555. And that is a full 1/10 of a second ahead there of Christian Reinhardt. Down, and this is where Niezolowski gets into that drop and then picks up the dirty air, which it is literally about that 3 to 5/10 of a second range where these cars really start feeling the effects of the draft, and you have to try and get yourself past if you have any chance of keeping hold of your tyres in this race. That looks as though that is what Niezolowski did, but it looks as though he still doesn't have anything for Christian Reinhardt late in this race here at Okayama. Niezolowski making the smallest of moves down to the inside there. Well, Christian Reinhardt not going to be close enough for him to do so. It looks like he's getting himself a little bit racy now. If you can get a good run off this corner down into turn number 8, it looks like you can get yourself a bit of a run as well down into turn number 9. But still not close enough is Niezolowski in the battle for the 1st position. A little bit further back, you've got Kurt Crum and Jamie Narbar doing a great battle there for the 3rd position. It looks as though Crum still has the upper hand over Narbar for the moment, but we are waiting to see whether Narbar has anything left in reserve as they come across the line with less than 6 laps to go at the stripe. 6 laps to go. Reinhardt still your race leader, putting out perhaps a little bit of a gap there to Niezolowski that last time by. But Niezolowski getting very close into turn number 1. Still not going to be close enough there. But this is that point where Niezolowski can start putting that pressure on. He's got himself through phase 1 of the dirt here. This is where his car's really going to start handling badly. But he can not only see Reinhardt, he can almost reach out of his cockpit and touch the rear wheels of that car. And this is that point where diving out to the inside into one of these tricky braking zones can prove dividends if you're ready to put it all on the line. And that is the case as Niezolowski determined to get this victory. Will he try his best to try and get that away from Christian Reinhardt? It looks as though Niezolowski really starting to position his car in a position to try and make an overtaking manoeuvre, but Reinhardt is having absolutely nothing of it. Let's not forget, Reinhardt is a veteran here on iRacing.com. He's one of the most well-known drivers, one of the most successful drivers on iRacing at the moment, and this performance really is summarising it to the T. He has been under immense pressure for most of this race, but not caved into a bit of it, and that is causing Niezolowski behind him to get a little bit frustrated, as we have got ourselves now 5 laps to go across the line. They're coming through the final couple of corners to do so. They're going to have themselves 5 laps in which they decide this race. Can Reinhardt hold on for another 10 minutes? Niezolowski once again looking very close into turn number 1 on that of Christian Reinhardt, but still not close enough to make any form of an impact in that battle for the lead. It looks as though Reinhardt really has got himself sorted out and sold here as he is coming down now that twisty far section into the right-hander hairpin. This is the corner where you really want to put the power down about 5 seconds before you actually do it. It's always like, don't do it, don't do it. Wait till you drive the car on a slippery dirt oval, and then you can come back to us and talk about whether or not you want to have that car. But still, Aranha outside and leading the way by now 0.4 of a second over Niezolowski. The gap increasing a little bit that previous lap as Aranha doing everything in his power to try and increase that gap between himself and the number 3 machine of Niezolowski. Further back, keeping an eye on the battles on the racetrack, they pretty much all have disappeared, except for that of Thomas Krum and Jamie Norbert in the battle for the 3rd position. Everyone else has kind of got themselves into that no man's land as they are less than 5 laps left to go here. It will be interesting though to see how this race develops over that final sprint to the flag. And Harana has looked so good in this race so far. He has got himself literally 4 laps to go to determine himself as being the race winner, and that gap between himself and Jan Niezolowski as they come across the line. And once again, to put the 26th lap in the books, it is up to exactly the same thing, 4.404 one-thousandths of a second, so 404 one-thousandths of a second, putting Ronhart still under that pressure, but Niezolowski still not being able to find a move there in that dirty air. So yeah, and so Niezolowski's spun. He's dropped back now to 5 seconds behind the race lead. Sorry about that. Didn't notice that on my screen, and that was coming down out of turn number 7. It looks like he got himself very, very close. Put the power down on that race car, and it looks as though he clipped the curb a little bit too much and spun it around, and that was it. Game over for him. It drops himself 6 seconds out behind the race lead, and after being one of the first drivers to put a pressure on Harana for the first 3/4 of this race, it looks as though finally Harana is going to get that clear air he has been dreaming and hoping for all race long. No pressure behind him. He can now go and turn a couple of laps towards the flag. So they've got themselves 3 1/3 laps to go here at Okayama. You are watching round 7 of the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series here on GlacierTV. Wolfington is your commentator. Apologies for them completely missing the internet with Niezolowski. You believe you got it on your TV screen, it just wasn't coming up on mine, and that put Niezolowski 6 seconds behind the race leader, but still a good 6 seconds ahead of Kurt Krum and Jamie Narbar, who are having that battle for the 3rd position. Looks as though Narbar has having to drop back just by about a 1/10 of a second here and there to give Krum that opportunity to secure that 3rd position. And the dirty air really doesn't work here at Okayama. We've got ourselves now 2.5 laps left to go here at Okayama. What has been a great race out front. Christian Araha and Jan Niezolowski have had themselves a momentous battle for the first 3/4 of the race, even though Niezolowski did not manage to get himself into the lead, putting on a great show, trying to get himself around Christian Araha. A little bit further back, Jamie Narbar and Kurt Krum had a great battle for 3rd and 4th, with Wade Haywood there for the first portion of that race, and also David Radcliffe as well, and what is essentially a battle from the 3rd all the way back to the 6th position on the racetrack. And having a quick look there at Kurt Krum and Jamie Narbar in the battle for the 4th position. Looks like neither of these guys are going to be able to get it on the podium unless one of the drivers ahead of them makes a mistake. That is not likely to happen, so they are fighting for honours and points. They're going to get a nice little paycheck for getting into the 4th position, these drivers. Nice points hold as well, and let's not forget, the drivers should do the best here in the Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series. Get themselves a visit to the Skip Barber Racing School factory to test out one of these cars in real life. Meanwhile, Aranha comes down the final corner. White flag is in hand. One more lap to go for Christian Aranha in that number 1 machine, leading Jan Niezolowski by 5.5 seconds after that spin there for Niezolowski in the 2nd position. I'll tell you what, though, Niezolowski gained half a second lap, previous lap. Kurt Crum sat in the 3rd position with Jeremy Narbot in the 4th spot and Wade Hayward rounding out your top 5. So into that right-handed 180-degree corner there, a bit similar to Spoon Cup at Suzuka, just the other way around and a little bit easier on corner exit for Aranha. Got the back straight and then 5 corners left to go for him in that number 1 machine, doing a sterling job in that number 1 car, getting himself from pole position to lead every single lap. The highest iRacing in the field, absolute dominance there by Aranha. He has got himself now 4 corners left to go, and unless he makes a humongous mistake now, pretty much going to guarantee himself the race win here at Okayama, and he's now coming himself down into that 90-degree left-hander. From there on in, 3 corners left to go. This, the first, a 90-degree right-hander. You're going to have to bear with us because they're exactly the same for the final 2. A 90-degree right-hander once again. Run those curbs wide and get it nice and left-hand side of the racetrack, coming down into the final corner for the final time. Christian Aranha wins round 7 of the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series here on GlacierTV. Great job by him to increase his lead in the Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series Championship. Jan Niezolowski comes home. I take that back, yes, so they have got themselves 1 more lap. My time is completely messed up. They have still got themselves 1 more lap here of Okayama. So take that all back. Aranha has got himself about 2/3 of a lap here. Coming once again down into turn number 5. That hard, difficult right-hand 180-degree corner as they go up the hill there. You've got to be careful to put the power down just to make sure you don't get yourself a little bit too off balance. Aranha coming down the back straight away here, so take everything I said a lap ago, put it back into place now. Aranha has now got himself that half a lap left to go, but I have to say Niezolowski has managed to close himself a second in these previous 2 laps over Aranha to get himself up to 4.5 seconds behind the race leader. Had he have not have made that mistake about 4 laps to go, he would have been in great position to charge for the lead, as he really did have the tyres to go through to the end, unlike what we've seen previously in Niezolowski. He has done a great job in that 2nd position, managing to save that slide there and keep himself there in the 2nd position. Behind him, Kurt Crum looks as though he's managing to get himself a little bit of a gap between himself and Jamie Narbot in the battle for the 3rd position. Narbot getting very close there here in the final sector of that racetrack. However, here he comes this time by, and I said it last time, Aranha still does win the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series here at Okayama. Great drive by him. The gap between himself and Niezolowski as they come across the line was 4.5 seconds. So Niezolowski gaining a 1.5 seconds there in 3 laps over Christian Aranha. Had he have not made the mistake, the question's going to be asked, did Niezolowski have a little bit extra in reserve to try and make that move on Christian Aranha? Aranha will increase his gap in the championship standings, putting a firm hold on that grip to win the inaugural Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series Championship that he pretty much has dominated from the get-go. And for Aranha, he's going to be very, very happy with that race victory. So just waiting for a couple of these drivers to come past to complete their race. We are, believe, waiting for Alan Kaner, currently sat in 10th position, and Sean Woodhouse to come across the start-finish line. Everyone else has completed the race now, and as they do so, that pretty much is everyone now scored complete in the race, perhaps with the exception of Wolfgang Wildenhurst. So we're just waiting for him to come past the start-finish line, I believe. So just give it a couple of seconds, but we can confirm Christian Aranha is your race winner in this race. Out of 16 drivers, we had ourselves 4 retirements. David Thor comes home in the 13th position after retiring down 27 laps, as was Emmanuel Menendez, who comes home 14th. Radio Rahandri comes home in 15th, and David Spade in 16th, as now we can show you your race results. So then, to confirm, Christina Reinhardt, your race winner here after 30 laps of the Okayama International Circuit. The gap between himself and Jan Nisolowski, 4.5 seconds. Kurt Crum comes home in a third position, almost 14.5 seconds behind the race lead, with Jamie Narbor in fourth, Wade Hayward in fifth, David Radcliffe in sixth, Stephen Edwards in seventh, Robert Jakubowski in eighth, Sean Woodhouse in ninth, Alan Kaner in 10th. And then Wolfgang Waldenhall was one driver in 1 lap down. Martin Silva was 5 laps down. He's now retired from the race. And then your other retirees, David Farr, Emmanuel Menendez, Radia Rahamandri, and David Spade. That is going to conclude our broadcast here of round number 7 of the Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series here on iRacing Motorsport Simulations. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time for round number 8 at Road America, one of the longest tracks we'll go to this season. Road America will be going 20 laps there, to take into account the race distance. That'll be with you in 2 weeks' time. June the 13th, once again, and as always, on Glacier TV. In the meanwhile, don't forget, we have got the Tall Creek Racing Touring Car Championship on Saturday, the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series on Saturday, the Afterburn IndyCar Series on Sunday, bringing you a great weekend of coverage on Glacier TV once again. Meanwhile, it's time to say goodnight, so we'll see you in a couple of days' time.